If a police officer pulled you over and you were going 55 miles an hour and he said to you, "Excuse me, sir or madam, I clocked you going 75 miles an hour. Please give me a $20 bill and then I won't give you a speeding ticket." As a Christian, what do? You have a police officer, he's in authority, and he's asking you now to break the law and give him a bribe. Should you just give him the $20 and go about your business as a Christian, or should you refuse to get the bribe and maybe he gives you a ticket, or worse, he beats you with his stick or something like that? There might even be a third option. You could say, give him the $20 and then immediately go to the police station and tell him I gave him a bribe because he asked for it and I was feared for my life, but he needs to be reprimanded or whatever. In any event, we can understand that there's situations where people who are in authority are being tyrannical, or they're actually acting outside of the authority that God has given them. In First Peter 2:14, 13, he says, "Submit yourself to the Lord's sake, for the Lord's sake, to every human institution, whether to a king as one in authority, or to governors as sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. For it is the will of God that by doing right you may silence the ignorance of foolish men. Act as free men and do not use your freedom as a covering for evil, but use it as bond slaves as good." So Peter tells us that we ought to act like free men, but we do it in the sense that we honor all the institutions in where we can. But the default position of the Christian is that he is free to do what is right. And so God has sent the true governors, the true police officers, the true soldiers will do what God has mandated them to do, which is, he says in verse 14, governors sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. We should always do good, even when a police officer asks us to do something which is bad. If you think about the old stories about when you think about the Nazi Party and soldiers and police officers that were under that system where there was a lot of evil being asked of them. The Nazi Party was in absolute authority in Germany, and then they commanded soldiers to do things which were immoral according to God's will and purpose and what's obvious in Scripture. And so the question is, did the Nazi soldiers should they submit themselves to those authorities, or should they recognize that those authorities are actually acting tyrannically outside of the mandate that God has given? That, for instance, governors are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers and the praise of those who do right. If you were a Nazi soldier and you were asked to take some Jews to a camp so that they could be exterminated, and you obeyed it, would you be obeying Scripture, or would you be defying the other action of the other command of Scripture? Is act as free men, and do not use your freedom as a covering for evil, but use it as bond slaves of God.